Welcome to the Academy of Secular Thought, the only place in Lusaka City where science and philosophy resides. Here we turn small talk into revolutionary spirited conversation with brilliant minds eager to unpack the sophistication of the human experience with ingenuity, humility, and honesty. Hey, what's up, folks? Today I want to talk about a very interesting philosophical dilemma called the Euthyphro Dilemma, because I think philosophical dilemmas are very interesting and fun because they drive your mind on wild journeys you have never been, and they teach you how to concretely think through things that you might have overlooked or simply thought very little about. They make the ordinary, the usual, seem so unusual, leaving you thinking, how in the world did I not see things from such a vantage point? Quite frankly, philosophical dilemmas are just amazing. However, they can be pretty unsettling sometimes and leave you stuck between a rock and a hard place. But hey, that's what makes a dilemma. Because a dilemma is basically a situation which forces you to choose between two options, both of which lead to unsatisfying results. And the Euthyphro Dilemma is by far the most interesting philosophical problem ever raised because, honestly, I don't think it has been answered in any fully satisfactory manner. So, what really is the Euthyphro Dilemma? Well, it was a question which, for the sake of simplicity, we can basically say was aimed at refuting what is known as divine command theory, a theory that states that what's moral and what's immoral is commanded by the divine. And this dilemma comes from the writing of the Greek philosopher Plato. It is worth noting before I explain any further that Plato didn't really write philosophical textbooks. He wrote dialogues, conversations between fictional characters, while mainly using his teacher Socrates as a mouthpiece. In his dialogues, Plato used the questioning pattern of Socrates, a pattern we have come to know as the Socratic method. Now, with that said, let's add some context to everything playing out here. The Euthyphro Dilemma is from a dialogue between Socrates and Euthyphro, set outside a court in Athens, Greece. And both Socrates and Euthyphro are seated outside this court awaiting their trials. Socrates has been accused by a young man named Miletus for allegedly corrupting the minds of the youths of Athens, as well as holding questionable beliefs about the Greek gods, basically that Plato was using poetry to change or to formulate other gods, aside from the Greek gods. And then Euthyphro, on the other hand, has brought a legal charge against his father for killing one of his workers, and is somewhat self-righteously convinced reporting his father is a good and right thing to do. So these two men get talking, engaging in what turned out to be a very spirited conversation about morality. And when Euthyphro tells Socrates why he is at the courthouse, Socrates is shocked and he asks why one would go this far to report his own father. Euthyphro, being a pompous scholar of law and very puffed up in his own knowledge of piety, which is basically holiness or moral goodness or even a good relationship with the gods, tells Socrates that prosecuting his father is the right thing to do because he believed the gods have commanded it. Then Socrates asks the all too tough question we have come to famously know as the Euthyphro Dilemma. And it went something like this. Is something pious because the gods say so, or do the gods say so because it's pious? At this point, basically, Socrates wanted to know the essence of piety, its definition in itself. Now, let's switch things up and break down the implication of this dilemma with our current fights over what morality should be grounded in. Divine command theory, as I mentioned earlier, grounds morality in a particular god or a particular sacred textbook. And it further asserts that morality is dictated by a particular god or gods, where a particular god determines what is good and what is bad, what is wrong and what is right. So, with that basic understanding of divine commandment theory, let's rephrase the dilemma and approach it in a language we can all understand. Does God say things because they are good, or are things good because God says they are good? If you take the first position that God says things because they are good, this implies that there is some other reason why things are good, a reason that is beyond God's essence, a reason outside God. This first position also means that God does not necessarily define what is good because it is something beyond his being. So instead of defining good, he basically restates it. This position also means that God, too, is constrained by rules of morality due to the simple fact that they are outside his control. And if that's the case, that means that one can be moral without God because morality in itself would exist even if God didn't. Because this first position puts you all, mere man, at equal footing with God, where attaining good is concerned. So how about if you take the second position, that things are good because God says they are good. Well, this too isn't a pleasant stance, because right away it makes morality seem quite arbitrary. Because if you ground good in God, then it is reduced to whatever that particular God wills. Say for instance, if that particular God says all girls that reach their preteens should be handed over to local inmates as sex workers, then automatically that directive becomes morally good for all parties involved. And who are you to disagree? Because it is a God because it is that God who embodies that which defines good. And if that particular God stopped existing, there would be no morality, no possible way to tell between good or bad. And if we ever try to do that, good or bad would at best be just a collective fabrication in our heads. And if you say that things are good because God says they are, then there is no substantial and deeper meaning for morality because God simply makes it up. So whichever position you take in Plato's Euthyphro Dilemma, you are going to have to take with you some blood wounds, because practically speaking, there seems to be no way out. Leave me a comment explaining the position you would take in this dilemma and why. Would be nice to hear your intellectual feedback on this philosophical problem that has troubled brilliant thinkers since the dawn of, well, Plato's earliest dialogues about 380 BC. But I would like to leave you with this long quote in an article written for the British Journal of General Practice. Dean Emeritus of the Royal Society of Medicine, as well as a senior ethics advisor, David Misobrook, said, "We live in a world of theists, atheists, and plenty in between, a marketplace of many religious and secular worldviews. At first glance, the Euthyphro Dilemma may seem a challenge to the value of religious traditions. In fact, it is a question that unites the religious and the secular in the need to seek right and wrong within the human world, whether or not we also choose to seek them in God. Instead of the religious disparaging godless morality and the secular disparaging the notion of faith traditions, we should recognize that any proper morality exists equally for all, just as the universe, according to Hick, is ambiguous and can be interpreted validly as either a God-breathed or a solely material place. So the fundamentals of morality can be conceptualized within either sort of worldview. There is no need for the faithful and the secular to build brick walls between themselves when discussing ethics." If you enjoy these philosophical and science-oriented conversations, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that whenever we have a new upload, you could be informed.